Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, and in this video we're picking up where we left off in the last one, starting from the Buckwong Hut and camping area there, and we're heading west or northwest on the Buckwong track up towards Mt Hope Road. So starting from here, up here to Mt Hope Road, turning right, heading northeast on Mt Hope Road, following that up onto the Mount Anderson Road, and approaching Mt Gibbo from the south side, which I've never done before. So Mount Anderson Road up onto the Mount Anderson track. You want to make sure you make this turn here because some people miss it, as you'll see in the video, like me, for example. So Mount Anderson track brings you up onto the Mt Gibbo track right near the Mount Anderson summit. And then our plan was to approach Mt Gibbo from the west, where that guide there ends might tell you something about what happens there. And then from there take the Mt Gibbo track and Wheelers Creek Log Road back to the Mt Pinnibar track, up over Pinnibar, and in this particular case we ended up taking Shady Creek Upper all the way back to Wheelers Creek Hut. Now we had a few change of plans in this trip. The weather closed in, there was rain, crazy conditions. I ended up on my ass in the track, so it's all happening, guys. So let's get into it without any further ado. Hey everyone, Jason here from Off the Beaten Path, and we're carrying on our trip with Dan from Out There with Dan. So picking up where we left off last time, just departing from the Buckwong Hut. So heading west from there on the Buckwong track. So our plan from here is to follow the Buckwong track up to the Mt Hope Road, and then take that across up to the Mount Anderson Road, up to Mount Anderson, and then up to Mt Gibbo. We're not really sure what the weather was going to be like. That was probably our biggest concern, and we always figured we would just play that by ear today and see how things panned out. It's not a bad run along the Buckwong track here. It's pretty easy going. So, you know, if you were looking to get into that Buckwong campground, you could come in from the north via Davies Plain track, assuming that's open. Your easiest option, though, would probably just be to come down from the Mt Hope Road, which you can get to from Tom Grogan via the Tom Grogan track. Or you could come in from the south, obviously. So yeah, you can see a lot of regrowth in the bush. I don't know that this track gets heaps of traffic, but yeah, a lot of regrowth since the bushfires. You can see why they're suggesting this year's possibly going to be a pretty potentially bad fire season this summer. And we're just getting a little bit further up Mount Hope here. I should say a little bit further up towards the Mt Hope Road. So yeah, just about a 5k run there, and we're here onto Mt Hope Road, which is obviously a two-wheel drive road. They use it for logging access primarily, so the road is kept in pretty good condition. And yeah, before not too long, we're heading sort of north along Mt Hope Road. Making a fairly good clip, as you can see. Road's not too corrugated at all, conditions are pretty good. You can see the weather's still very overcast. Hadn't seen any rain for a little while, so we were sort of hoping that maybe the rain was going to hold off. It's one of the things in the high country, you've just got to be prepared for the weather to change on you, because you really never know what it's going to do. So it's about a 12 kilometre run along the Mount Hope Road here. Gave the cars a chance to stretch their legs back in two-wheel drive. And just veering left here onto the Mount Anderson Road. And as we're getting back up in the altitude, you can see that fog or cloud just closing back in. Definitely altitude related. And again, just veering left here. And working our way along Mount Anderson Road. That's the Fiasco Trail on the right. That's a fire trail. Depending what maps you look at, sometimes it's showing as a hiking track, sometimes it's showing as a four-wheel drive track. So I'm not 100% sure what the go is there exactly. But yeah, we're coming up sort of on the southern side of Mt Gibbo. So I've never approached Gibbo from this direction before. I've done it approaching from the west, approaching from the east. This time we're coming up via Mount Anderson on the south side of the range. So I was interested to see what this was like. Just coming up here, you can see another track to the left. That's the Anderson Saddle Track. So that's a dead-end track. Not for today, but we might have to check that out sometime. About 3 or 4 k's from here up to the Mount Anderson Track, which is then the last couple of kilometres up to the Mt Gibbo Track, near the Mount Anderson summit. So yeah, as I said, this road narrows down a little bit here, but it's still in quite good condition. It's still really a two-wheel drive road, so without doubt I'd say this is the easiest way to get up to Gibbo, excepting that you have to then deal with the eastern side of Mt Gibbo, which at the moment looks like a bomb's hit it, which you'll see when we get there. But in terms of actually getting up onto the Mt Gibbo track, this is by far the easiest way to get there that I've found. You could just about do it in a two-wheel drive vehicle all the way, if you came in on the Mount Hope Road from down near Romeo somewhere or something. So yeah, this is where we turn right onto the Mount Anderson track. If we go straight ahead here, as the navigator did, because he didn't know where he was driving, this is the this is the western end of the Mount Anderson track, and runs in for a few k's, but then actually ends at a dead end. So quick turnaround there on the Mount Anderson track, and time for Dan to take the lead in the mighty Silver Emu. So heading on the Mount Anderson track up to Mt Gibbo, and as you can see there, that's a seasonally closed gate. So when the tracks are seasonally closed, this is as far as you can get. It's a good steady climb from here, but nothing too difficult at all. And it was a pretty short run up onto the Mt Gibbo track, and once we got up there, the fog had closed in and the track was wetter than I've ever seen it. Like, there's often a little bit of water, there's a few puddles here and there, but they were everywhere. Just everywhere. So from where the Mount Anderson track joins the Mt Gibbo track back to Mt Gibbo, you're only talking a couple of Ks, so it's a pretty short run. So our original plan had been go do Mt Gibbo, then Mt Pinnibar, and then down to Wheeler's Creek Hut, because this was a part of the high country Dan had never been to before, and if possible he was certainly keen to get up on Mt Gibbo as one of the highest mountains you can drive to. I think Pinnibar is just a touch higher. So, yeah. Oh, look, here we are. We're actually turning left onto the Mt Gibbo track here. So that was still part of the Mount Anderson track leading up to the Mt Gibbo track. So now we're heading back west on Mt Gibbo. Track was certainly a little bit more torn up than I've seen it in the last couple of years, that's for sure. And yeah, much like the approach track, it was wet up there as well, and visibility wasn't great. Of course, one of the reasons it's great to drive up to these peaks is to enjoy the view. So obviously we already knew that wasn't going to happen today. But we're still keen to try and get there just to actually make it on this trip. And even these sections here were a lot rockier, a lot more exposed than what they were last time I drove this, which was with Matt in his Prado. About this time last year. So 12 months of wear and tear has certainly taken a little bit of a toll on this track, that's for sure. Just crawling up over some of these little obstacles here. Again, not super difficult, but definitely something you want to take slow and steady. Dan's doing a great job leading the way, especially considering he's never driven this track before, and this is about the worst conditions that I've ever tackled this track in. So, you know, not ideal conditions to be driving a track for the first time. So he's doing a stellar job out there in front. And we've just come to that section about 300 meters from the summit where that really quite lumpy climb is, and it's not coming through on camera, but you'll see what I mean maybe in a minute as to why Dan's just pulled up and opened the door and gone, you know what, this might be as far as we go today. Alright, we've come to Gibbo. I brought Dan here for his first time, and look what we got. We got fog, we got rain, and we're giving up. This is why we're giving up. Since I was last here, the B line looks like the A line used to. The A line looks like a bomb's going off, and the rain's getting heavier and heavier. So we're gonna get off here before we have more serious issues. Yeah, she's pretty foggy, and this rain's just started, and it's getting heavier and heavier. So yeah, sometimes discretion is the better part of valor. So yeah, that was a no for today. Neither one of us wanted to break a CV or anything like that, and we're also considering the fact that we've still got to get off this mountain range, and this weather is really closing in. You can probably hear that rain hitting the camera case mounted on the outside of the car. You see how wet the bonnet is already. So we're just trying to maneuver the vehicle so that we can both get turned around. And get heading back the other way. Fortunately, there was a little bit of an area behind me where I could do a 3-point turn. Or maybe a 5-point turn, as the case may be, but we got there in the end. This probably would have been about a 300-point turn in the 76. Doesn't quite have the turning arc of the Padge. So yeah, we're back with water on the lens, and as you can see there, so we're not going over Mt Gibbo. Wheeler's Hut is a long way off and it's raining. We've got to get down. So as we're heading down off Gibbo here, I'm chatting to Dan on the radio, talking about what our options are, and while driving through these humongous puddles on the track. So the easiest option would have been to head back down the Mt Gibbo track and then onto the Wheelers Creek logging road, which would have pretty much taken us straight to Wheelers Creek Hut, and it would have been a fairly easy drive. But it would have meant that we didn't get to do Pinnibar on this trip. So that was one option that I was putting up for Dan. The other option was we just go, you know what, screw the weather, we're going to push on, we're going to Pinnibar, and then we'll come down Shady Creek Upper and into Wheelers Creek Hut that way. Now the risk with that was the weather and conditions and the fact that I've never driven Shady Creek Upper. And again, these are probably not the conditions that you ideally want to be driving tracks for the first time in. You can see here how torn up and lumpy it is. There's wombat holes on the track here everywhere. This is not what the Mt Gibbo track is normally like at all, not this section of it. Whole different ball game to what it's usually like. Just so much more lumpy. Some rock steps sort of forming here. Just, yeah, you can see the front end dropping down there. Just taking it slow and steady, but also conscious that every minute we're up here, the weather's just closing in. And the track is getting wetter and wetter. At least this section here is still in pretty good condition from when it was last graded, probably fairly recently, in the last couple of years I suspect. But you can see ahead that weather's just closing in more and more. The visibility is getting less and less. And we're just coming up on that turnoff I mentioned to Wheelers Creek Logging Road, and as I said, this would have been the easiest option. Left the choice with Dan, keeping in mind he's never driven these tracks before. But who wants to take the easy way when you can still go to Mt Pinnibar? Dan was keen to go there. I was happy to have a crack, so yeah, that's what we decided to do, is push on. So it's about 5Ks here along this section of the Mt Gibbo track up to Pinnibar, or up to the Mt Pinnibar track, and then another couple of Ks up to the Pinnibar summit. You can see there some of the erosion on the left hand side of the track, just how much the water has actually eroded that section of track, and the bush is closed in. Not super difficult this section, but you definitely want to pay attention to your line. You don't want to be putting a wheel down in those massive big ruts on the side, that is for sure. Fantastic view there. Yet another puddle on the track. And more wet track. As I said, like, there's usually a few puddles here on the Mt Gibbo track between the Gibbo summit and Pinnibar, but nothing like this. This was just massive puddle after massive puddle, and it was only getting wetter the whole time. You can hear that rain coming down. Really wondering what the rocky Shady climb up Pinnibar was going to be like. And yeah, for those of you that have driven the Mt Gibbo track up to Pinnibar, you'd recognise this is the last climb. Starts off with a steady climb and just gets steeper and steeper the further up you get, particularly after this first hump. Despite the fact that it was all wet, traction was really good. Slow and steady was definitely winning this race. Nice even throttle control, and the car just drove up it as it normally would. So I was a little bit concerned about this one, because if we couldn't get up and out this way and we couldn't get over Gibbo, our only option would have been back on the Mount Hope road, maybe the Mount Hope track down into Tom Grogan or something, I don't know. But we didn't have to worry about that in the end, because this wasn't as difficult to drive as I thought it might have been in these conditions. And just about to come up and crest the top here onto the Mt Pinnibar track. And yeah, for those of you that know the area well, you know it's only a couple of k's from here up to the Mt Pinnibar summit. And we kept pushing on without any further ado, because we had to get up onto Pinnibar and then start the really long descent down Shady Creek Upper to get down out of this weather and then get back to Wheelers Creek Hut, which is where we're planning to camp for the night. So, and for those of you who don't remember or haven't seen the first episode in this trip, the end of day one, I was getting lights on the Pajero, so this whole day I haven't turned the car off once, because it was an intermittent issue getting those dash lights on, and I didn't want to run the risk of being up here in the high country. I figured I could turn it off when we got to Wheelers Hut, and it's a two-wheel drive out of there, so if I've still got issues in the morning, then you know we can just call it quits there. So as you can see, working our way up Pinnibar here, those rock steps at this particular time weren't overly slippery, so good traction all the way along here. And just working our way up towards the summit, weather closing in more each time. This Pinnibar approach track hasn't changed a whole lot in the last couple of years. This rock seems pretty stable. It's been sort of exposed and weathered like that for the last couple of years, certainly the last several times I've driven this track, that's for sure. And yeah, before not too long we're on that final approach, climbing up to the summit. You can probably hear that rain getting heavier and heavier. So just conscious that every minute we're out here, the track's getting wetter and slipperier. And in the back of my mind I'm thinking about Shady Creek Upper and what's it going to be like, because I've never driven it. You can just see the Mt Pinnibar trig point coming through. The top is still missing, having snapped off in the wind. It does get quite windy up on Pinnibar, from time to time, and it's windier at the moment than it looks from inside the car here, let me tell you that. Again, you can't see much. So, here we are, Mt Pinnibar, in the rain, in the wind, in the wet. This is not how I recommend doing it. It was fun getting here. Now we're just going to get down. We're going to head to Shady Creek Hut, try and get somewhere dry to camp, try and get down off here safely. This weather is insane. So anyway, yeah, a little different to last time. Now look, the Gibbo and the Pinnibar tracks are so much more chewed up than they were last time I was here. Even in good weather, they're going to be challenging. So anyway guys, I'm getting back in the car. It's pretty cold. I guess challenging compared to what they were. That was my obvious impression at the time. So yeah, take that for what it is. So from there we continued west from the Mt Pinnibar summit on the Shady Creek Upper. So just pulled up there for a minute to make sure Dan was on the right exit. There are 3 tracks that go up to Pinnibar. And keeping in mind he's never driven this way before, so when I told him we're taking Shady Creek Upper, well, didn't mean a lot to him. So yeah, I was quite interested to see what this track was like because I've literally never driven it. So here we are in the rain, in these conditions with poor visibility, driving Shady Creek Upper for the first time. So far it started off pretty good. Nice open track, very similar to the easier parts of the Mt Gibbo track. Wet today, of course, and no two ways about that. Certainly a track that I think would have some great views. These open sections through here with the snow gums would have been amazing, I think. But we weren't able to enjoy the views with the conditions as they are today. Again, you can see here, cleared up a little bit. Just the water just sitting on the track. So I was really hoping we weren't going to be in for too many steep descents. Now there weren't any marked on the HEMA, so that was, you know, something to think about. But as we all know, the HEMA maps aren't really gospel when it comes to track conditions. And like so many times, you go down, you go up again before you get to go down again. Quite scenic with the snow gums through the mist here. Just yeah, quite scenic. Not enjoying the view, but just the immediate scenery there was just yeah, quite eerie. And yeah, once we crested that hill, we're sort of starting to work our way down the other side. So it's quite a long track, Shady Creek Upper. It's about 18 to 20 k's from the Pinnibar summit down to where it joins Cattleman's Creek track, which is 1 or 2 k's from Shady Creek Hut. So quite a long, steady run. Track conditions do vary. Again, here you get your typical high country track on the side of the hill with a good drop off on one side. Now through here we're heading down, probably at a steeper angle than the camera would have you believe, and it's a dirt clay based track, so taking it steady because I really didn't want to build up too much speed and run the risk of having to brake. Really didn't want to be doing that in these conditions. So yeah, Dunstan's Road on the right and Shady Creek Upper on the left. So clearly we're veering left to continue on this. Dunstan's Road will take you down to Gibson's Hut and Shady Creek Lower track. For us this was the more direct route, so we continued on Shady Creek Upper. With yeah, another hill to get over. Now right about here I'm starting to think that this track doesn't necessarily get heaps of traffic. The bush is certainly starting to grow into the track a little bit. A lot of this regrowth post the bushfires, and that only becomes more pronounced the further we progress along the track here. So yeah, all these descent sections here just taking really slow and steady. Didn't want to have to brake suddenly, didn't want to run the risk of starting to slip, because I think in these conditions once you started slipping you would just continue slipping. So our focus was very much on just getting to the end safely rather than getting there quickly. It was still raining, track was already wet. You can see what I mean about some of these sections here being very overgrown. Reminiscent of some of the tracks we drove on the way through to the King Casillas area early on this trip. And yeah, that weather's not going anywhere anytime soon at all. Your typical switchback track that you see on the high country when you're climbing or descending steep hills. And just keep an eye out for the big wombat hole on the left hand side as you come over that. It's probably a little bit hard to see there, but yeah, it's just indicating how slippery this section of track can be and how torn up it is. You can see here this section is also pretty lumpy, so just having a look at it there to try and find my line, and I've tried to put a wheel on the left and one in the center of the track and sort of span the leftmost wombat holes, not having a lot of flex in an independently sprung vehicle, and that seemed to work okay. I think coming up here that'd be a very different thing, but for now that was fine.
Hey guys,
yeah,
well, we're still making our way down off Pinnibar. We're on Shady Creek Upper track or some such. Coming down to a section here where it looks like it splits into an A line that looks like it goes straight down the hill, and a B line. So I think today is a good day for the B line, given how much water there is on the tracks. The rain's sort of easing up, maybe. I don't know. Very slippery, very wet. Taking it pretty slow and steady.
So yeah, there was no split. That was just something that was on one of the human maps that I was looking at. But yeah, definitely taking it slow and steady. I think it tends to look a bit clearer when I've had to change the battery in the GoPro and I've had the chance to clear the case on the GoPro of water. But the reality is it's still raining, still very foggy as we're crawling our way down the side of this hill. And we're starting to wonder too, there's a crossing at the bottom where we're going to cross Shady Creek, and we're really starting to think about what that might be like, because that was the other thing. We didn't want to get to the bottom here, find a crossing that was impassable or an exit on the other side that was impassable, and we're stuck down in a valley. So these are all the things you're thinking about when you're driving these kind of tracks. You can see how loose that looks, how wet it is. We're like, if we have to turn around and try and come back up this, it's not going to be a happy day. So again, just pausing to have a look at it and think about it. And the whole time I'm thinking, I hope when we get to the bottom here, we're not going to be needing to turn around and try and drive back up this. you know, this is the unknown when you're driving tracks that you've never driven before and you just have no idea of what's going to be in front of you. And it's raining and wet like this. You know, as we all know, in the dry, tracks are a whole different ball game. Tracks that are very difficult in the wet become very easy in the dry. West Falls Road, Tallarook, I'm looking at you. And you can see we're getting close here. If you look in the distance in this shot, you can see a track on the far side of the valley there. And that is the track up out of the other side of the river crossing. And from here it looked all right. And just as I've come around this corner, I'm going, okay, here we go. Wet, rutted clay and what looks like a corner down the bottom there. You can see the wheels are just falling straight into those ruts. So I've opted to not even try and do anything different, just sit the tyres in the rut. Generally with an IFS vehicle you find you've got reasonable clearance, and just try to take it nice and steady and slow. First gear low range with a bit of braking. Most importantly, I didn't want to be building up any speed here because I could see that there was a corner here. So I've just edged my way down that. And yeah, here's the corner. Ruts continue on down around the corner. So again, we've just crawled over that hump and just starting to get some glimpses of Shady Creek down there. And getting a look at that exit road on the other side, it looks a lot better. So by this point, I started to think, okay, we're going to be all right. We're going to get out of here. So just pulling up here to go back and come down there.
In these conditions, wet, slippery clay hill. I just came down that. Dan's coming along. Down here, stopped at the bottom. River's just there. Crossing and track on the other side looks a lot better. Fortunately for us, this was sketchy as. For the sake of completeness, I do not recommend driving this stuff when it's raining. We're here by misadventure rather than design.
So you can see Dan coming down there, and he was actually trying to span the ruts and sit up on top of them. We had been chatting on the radio and he'd thought I said that I spanned the ruts and stayed out of them.
Slow and steady, mate, that's the way.
That's why he's reversing here and just trying to get his wheels up out of those ruts. Which may not have been a bad idea in normal situations, but this stuff is just so greasy and slippery today that it's not really going to happen. I mean, look, maybe if you're running 35-inch mud terrains at 5 psi, you might get there, but we're both running all terrains and our pressures aren't that low. Both sitting around sort of 18, 20 psi, I think.
Good help on the camera.
So yeah, Dan's just trying to get his front end up out of those ruts. I'm honestly surprised he's getting any traction to back up that thing. I mean, I guess he's still on the flatter part, but very surprised. Just thinking about what his options are, and he's decided to take it back a little bit further. To try and get across on that line right from the start. So he's got the front across, but as you can see the back end is starting to come around, and then it's so slippery the back end is just falling in, and he's running the risk there of being crossed up, and then it just drags the front end. So you're not getting out of these ruts. There's just no two ways about it.
I just drove the ruts, mate. I couldn't make it stay out of them.
So yeah, Dan I think is going to follow that same line now.
I use that term drove loosely.
You see he's got nice low wheel speed, good throttle control, just taking it really steady. The 90 series Protos seem to have quite good engine braking. And he's made it down that first section. So time for the cameraman to move. And just how slippery is this track? Well, you're about to find out. So I was walking down the side there on the grass and that was okay. I don't know why I decided after that to step out onto the track. I think I just thought it would be a bit quicker. Not a great idea. Even going down sideways. There it is.
Are you alright?
Oh good, plenty of cushion to land on, fortunately.
Maybe.
So yes, fortunately Dan caught that on his GoPro and now it's in the video. So this last section, from this angle you can see that it's nearly just as rutted as that first section. It didn't look that way on the GoPro, and it's good and steep and slippery, as I just proved. But yeah, Dan's crawled down there nicely. So from here, just this last little bit down to the river crossing. Really pretty little river crossing down here on Shady Creek. Little bit of a rocky entrance on this side, which I'm not sure is going to come through on the GoPro, but nice easy exit on the other side. Couple of rocks there sort of in the middle of that exit. So hence I've gone to the right there to put the wheels over the top of those rocks. But this exit road here, you can see this is a two-wheel drive road. Very different to what we came down on the other side. So we're certainly hoping that we weren't going to get more of that. And we didn't. This side's been graded. And as I said, it's basically a two-wheel drive road. And we're feeling pretty happy that we're going to get to Wheeler's Hut finally. It's only just a couple of k's from here. So probably about 2 or 3 k's on Shady Creek before we join Cattleman's Track. It does vary a little bit, this track through here, but it's all, you know, pretty flat, easy driving, even in these wet conditions. As long as you're not driving like a maniac, traction is not really an issue, and it's yeah, nice comfy drive. And that weather was going absolutely nowhere. But yeah, nice easy run all the way through here. Getting a little bit late in the day. As you can see, the headlights are starting to show up on the bushes either side of the track. Just passing there the seasonally closed gate, which means we're coming down onto Cattleman's Creek track because yeah, that's where it's seasonally closed from. So turning left here, and from here it's literally just a couple of k's down to Wheeler's Creek Hut. So Shady Creek that we crossed actually joins up with a couple of other little tributaries, flows into Wheelers Creek. And that's Wheelers Creek or Shady Creek, whatever it is at that section just down there on the left. Coming up to the bridge here, you can see on the right hand side there an old track going down to the creek. So there used to be a ford that people could drive across here, but that has long since been taken out by parks, and the bridge is the only way across these days. And here's the entrance into Wheelers Creek Hut that you might recognise from when Matt and I came here about 12 months ago. And what a pleasant sight this was, coming in to somewhere where we knew we could get some shelter from the weather. Our swags are up on the roof, thoroughly wet through at this stage from the rain that they've been in for the last few hours.
Here we are, Wheelers Creek Hut, through the rain and the mud and everything else. This is not what Dan was expecting when I told him we were going to a hut. After you.
This is nicer than my house.
This one's been rebuilt after the bushfires. Probably not coming through on the GoPro, not much light in here. But yeah, nicely lined fireplace, good timber flooring. Long drop out the window.
Freshly painted, smells like.
Yeah, I reckon it would be.
So yeah, we used the veranda to set up for our food prep. Dan kindly volunteered after a long day of wheeling to cook us up a really tasty stew. You can see the meat there in that metal bowl marinating as he's getting all the other ingredients together. Yeah, we thought we were just going to settle in and enjoy dinner. Little did we know we were going to have someone invade our camp later on tonight.
Yep. By the time I light the charcoal, that'll be ready. And then, yeah. Cool. Yeah, sweet.
So we set the fire pit up under the awning next to the padge, because obviously we didn't want to put the fire pit up on the veranda and have coals drop through the fire pit and damage the veranda. So fortunately able to put the awning up so that the rain didn't put the charcoal out on the fire pit, and set that up down there to brown the steak off before going in the pot for the stew. So Dan's now got it all in the pot, adding a little bit of stock to it and putting it on to cook. In the trusty
All right,
camp
here we are.
oven.
Dinner from Chef Dan, worth the wait. How good does that look? We're going to tuck in. I'll tell you about it later.
So that was a fantastic stew. Really
So-
nice. The bread was pretty good too.
Are you serious?
I'm not joking, mate. Okay. Are you ready? Hang on, I'm with you.
Oh, there is too! Fuck! There's a rat in your bag.
It's my food bag, but that is ambitious. That is an Hang on, I've got to film. Just wait. So guys, I'm here with Jason. I'm not going to lie to you. There is a giant rat in my food bag right now. It's got a tail. It's not posing as a pygmy possum. It's definitely a rat. And it's looks concerned we're here, but I think it's gone into like some kind of... It's definitely gone in the fright, not the flight mode with this situation. They're going to dump in my food bag just there next to the tin of beans on the left-hand side. What do we do?
He's
What are we
a bit
doing
shy
there?
with all this light, isn't he? I don't know if that's a rat.
Mate, it's a rat. Is it a... It's not a pygmy possum. It's a rat.
I don't know what it is, but I don't know if it's a rat.
I'm coming down there with my camera.
I don't know if that's a rat. I just can't believe it's up here on the veranda with us. This is mental.
I think he's still eating.
I think he could be. Maybe that's what he's doing. Rated since then, and it's steep and it's gravelly. And
So
rocky, but
yeah,
it's
if you
not
want to see what
crazy.
happened to the rat, jump over to Dan's channel, check out his video. He published that one a couple of months ago
they
because he's
go
a
in
bit quicker than me.
cycles, 'cause, like, Gibbo's
and you'll see what
definitely
happened to the
getting more
rat.
Yeah.
And like today was
It wasn't on your video.
Let me just promise no rats were harmed in the making of this video.
Too bad, you pick the right line and go slow.
Yep. That's it. Look, when I drove it, I had the rear diff lock in, and what happened was as I got up the big rock step, the rear diff lock just kind of, I couldn't turn, and it just pushed me onto the B line. Whereas Matt had a rear diff lock in his Prado, but didn't use it, and he just drove up, straight up, and yeah. But, your traction on there, I think, is very different when it's not raining.
Yeah.
Like, when we first got there and it hadn't really started raining, I was like, oh yeah, this is a bit more torn up, but I'll have a crack at it.
Yeah,
and then
as soon as we started talking.
and then the more we talked about it, it started raining, and I'm looking at it just getting wetter and wetter and wetter, and I'm like, nah, this is not going to work.
So guys, thanks for watching. If you've watched all the way to the end, please like, comment and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next video. If you want to support the channel, jump over to our Buy Me a Coffee page. You can pick up stickers and patches there, or just donate to the channel to keep us doing what we're doing. Thanks guys, see you in the next one.